I had been feeling uneasy for weeks. My wife Mila had changed in subtle but undeniable ways. It started small. She'd be a little late getting home from work, or spend more time in her office with the door closed. At first I convinced myself it was nothing, that maybe she just had a lot on her plate or needed some alone time. But then the little things started adding up. She'd get distracted when I tried talking to her, her responses becoming curt, distant. And then there was her phone. It had always been something we didn't think twice about. We trusted each other implicitly, and we never felt the need to hide anything. But suddenly, Mila was protective of it. She would lock it when she wasn't around, always texting with the screen down, and sometimes I'd catch her quickly scrolling through her messages when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I thought maybe I was overthinking it, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Then came the late nights. I started noticing she'd leave the house more often after dinner, claiming she had errands to run or meetings with friends. I never saw her leave with anyone else, but something about it didn't sit well. The last few weeks felt like a slow drift. Every time I tried to approach her to ask her what was going on, she'd brush me off. "I'm just tired," she'd say. "It's work, it's stressful." I tried to believe her, but that little voice in my head kept getting louder. Why was she acting like this? Why was she pulling away? I couldn't help but think of the small signs, the way her eyes would quickly shift away from mine when I asked questions, the hesitance in her voice when I mentioned spending time together, and the distance between us grew. We'd sit at the dinner table, but the conversation felt forced, like we were just going through the motions. The intimacy we once had was replaced with silence, awkwardness. And it was during those quiet nights, when we were both lying in bed but not really talking, that the nagging feeling inside me grew stronger. Something was wrong, something that Mila wasn't telling me. It wasn't just a gut feeling anymore. I could feel it in the air, the way she'd suddenly be busy with something whenever I wanted to connect. I began asking myself if she was hiding something, but I didn't want to believe it. I trusted her. I had to trust her. Still, the thought lingered in the back of my mind, and I couldn't shake it. Little did I know, that feeling would soon become my worst nightmare. I opened the door, expecting to find Mila in the living room, or maybe the kitchen, preparing dinner like she usually did. But the moment I stepped inside, everything changed. The silence was deafening. I called her name, but there was no response. It was too quiet. I froze for a second, my heart beginning to race as a sense of dread slowly crept over me. The air in the house felt thick, like something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I stood there for a few moments, just staring into the dimly lit hallway, listening for any sign of movement. Nothing. I took a few tentative steps toward the living room. Then I saw her. Mila was lying on the floor, her body twisted in a way that made my stomach lurch. She was bound, her wrists and ankles tied tightly with rope. My heart slammed in my chest as I struggled to process what I was seeing. My mind raced, but no words came. She looked vulnerable, terrified, and yet somehow lifeless. Her eyes were wide open, but they were glazed over, distant, as if she wasn't even aware of my presence. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to rush to her, untie her, hold her, but I was frozen in place. My legs felt like they were made of stone. I had no idea what was happening. Was this a robbery gone wrong? Had she been attacked? My hands trembled as I took a few steps closer, but the closer I got, the more I could see that there was something off. She wasn't just bound. Her body had bruises, marks that looked far too deliberate, too cruel. My throat tightened as I realized this wasn't an accident, and it certainly wasn't something as simple as a home invasion. Whoever did this had done it intentionally. The marks on her skin, the fear in her eyes, it all pointed to something far darker. My mind screamed at me to act, to do something, but I just stood there, staring at the woman I had loved for years, trying to piece together the situation. And then my eyes caught something on the floor beside her phone. It was an unfamiliar phone, one that didn't belong to her. I knelt down and picked it up, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't know who it belonged to, but I had a horrible feeling I was about to find out. As I turned the phone over in my hands, I saw the lock screen, two people, smiling, posing together. It was a man and Mila. My stomach dropped, and a cold wave of realization washed over me. The knot in my chest tightened. I had been right all along. The truth was finally here, staring me in the face, and it was worse than anything I could have imagined. Mila had been hiding something from me, something I couldn't yet fully understand, but the evidence was undeniable. I wasn't sure what to do, but one thing was clear: the woman I thought I knew had betrayed me in ways I hadn't even imagined. As I stood there, the weight of everything crashing down around me, I tried to make sense of what was unfolding in front of me. The phone in my hand seemed to burn with the realization of what I had discovered. The images on the screen, the casual smiles of my wife and this man, whoever he was, shattered everything I had once believed about her, about us. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me, leaving me falling into a void of confusion, anger, and disbelief. How could this be happening? How could the woman I had trusted with everything, my life, my love, betray me like this? My mind raced as I struggled to piece together the events leading up to this moment. All the signs, the things I had ignored or dismissed as nothing, suddenly made sense. The late nights, the strange texts, the way she had pulled away from me. The love I thought we shared had been nothing more than a lie. I thought I knew her, thought we were a team, partners in everything. But now it felt like I was looking at a stranger, someone who had been playing a game with me, hiding a side of herself I never knew existed. I glanced back at Mila, still lying there, bound and bruised. She was breathing, but barely. I didn't know if she was conscious or if she even knew I was there. The thought that she had been through something this horrific, this violent, made my heart ache. But at the same time, a deep anger simmered beneath the surface. How could she do this to me? How could she involve herself with another man while I was left in the dark, believing everything was fine? I wanted answers. I needed to know who this man was, why he was a part of our lives, and how deep this betrayal ran. But the truth was, I didn't even know where to begin. I had no idea what had happened to Mila, how she had ended up like this, or how long this affair had been going on. My stomach turned as I thought about all the times I had questioned her, all the little things I had brushed off as paranoia. What if I had confronted her sooner? What if I had seen the signs and done something about it? Would things have turned out differently? I felt like I was drowning in questions, each one more painful than the last. But the hardest part, the part that I couldn't shake, was the realization that I wasn't just betrayed by a stranger. I was betrayed by the person I loved most in the world. The person I had built my entire life around. And now I had no idea what came next. How do you move forward when everything you thought you knew about love and trust has been torn apart in an instant? The anger hit me like a tidal wave, crashing over everything I had known, drowning me in a sea of rage and confusion. How could she do this? How could she do this? How could Mila betray me in the worst possible way? The woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved with all my heart, had kept this secret from me. The emotions swirling inside me were too much to process. It wasn't just the affair, the physical betrayal that cut deeper than any wound. It was the lies, the dishonesty, the quiet manipulation. The trust I had built with her over the years had been shattered in an instant, and there was no going back from that. I didn't know who I was more angry with: Mila, for what she had done, or myself for not seeing the signs sooner. My heart was heavy with betrayal, but my mind couldn't stop asking why. Why would she do this? What had driven her to this point? I tried to remember the good times we had shared, the laughter, the moments when I thought we were happy. But now they felt like lies, like they were built on a foundation that was already crumbling without my knowing. Everything we had shared, every quiet evening together, every word of affection, felt hollow in the wake of this discovery. I thought I knew her. I thought I understood her. But now I felt like a fool. How could I have been so blind? I glanced back at Mila, still tied up and barely conscious, her body a painful reminder of everything that had gone wrong. She wasn't just physically hurt, it felt like she had betrayed me in a way that left scars that would never heal. The thought of the other man, whoever he was, made my blood boil. Had he been a part of our lives all this time? Had he seen us as a family as I had? How could she do this to me, knowing the love I had for her, knowing everything we had built together? The questions kept coming, relentless and brutal, with no answers. But it wasn't just anger that I was feeling. There was also a deep, gnawing sadness that filled the empty spaces in my chest. Sadness for what I had lost, sadness for the woman I had once loved, and sadness for the life that had just been ripped apart. How do you reconcile the person you thought you knew with the one who had been hiding so much from you? How do you go on when everything you've built, every piece of trust and love, has been crushed under the weight of betrayal? I was lost, adrift in a sea of emotions I couldn't navigate. The anger, the pain, the disbelief, everything was swirling inside me, and I had no idea what to do next. The only thing I knew for sure was that nothing would ever be the same again. I stood there, in the middle of the living room, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. The anger was still there, bubbling just beneath the surface, but it was quickly being overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of numbness. I could feel my chest tightening, the air in the room feeling thicker with every passing second. The woman I had loved, the woman I had thought I knew, was lying on the floor, tied up and bruised, a victim of her own choices. And yet somehow she was still the woman I had promised to stand by, the woman I had vowed to protect. How could I reconcile those two versions of her? How could I look at her and not see the person who had betrayed me so deeply? I couldn't tear my eyes away from her, even though every inch of me wanted to. Every part of me screamed to walk out, to leave this nightmare behind and never look back. But another part of me, the part that had once been in love with her, that still wanted to believe there was something worth saving, couldn't bring myself to walk away. What did it even mean to walk away? Could I really just leave, knowing that everything we had shared, everything we had built, was now a lie? Or did I have it in me to stay and try to make sense of this, to try to heal the wound she had inflicted, both on me and on herself? The decision felt impossible. Every instinct told me to leave, to walk away from the woman who had shattered my world. But then there was the other side, the guilt, the love, the commitment. She was still my wife, still the woman I had promised to share my life with, for better or for worse. Could I throw that all away because of one mistake? Could I truly abandon her in her moment of need, even after everything she had done to me? I looked down at the phone in my hand again. The pictures of Mila with the other man still burned into my mind. I didn't even know who he was, but it didn't matter. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was everything. The lies, the secrets, the trust that had been broken beyond repair. And yet, even now, a small part of me wanted to understand, wanted to know why. Why had she done this? Why had she let it go this far? And how had we gone from being happy together to this? But all those questions seemed pointless now. The truth was, nothing would ever be the same. I had to face that. My heart ached with the realization that the love I had for her had been twisted by lies and betrayal. The world I had once known had fallen apart, and now I had to choose whether to try to rebuild it or walk away, leaving it all behind. The hardest part was knowing that whatever choice I made, I would never truly be the same.